And howdy, folks, and welcome back to the Easy Comic Reader podcast. All right, today we're going to take a little deep dive into Dynamite magazine. All right, I definitely remember Dynamite magazines in my school library, all throughout elementary and on. One cool thing about Dynamite that we probably won't hear in this podcast is they always had some comic strips. For example, at one point, they introduced their own characters, the Dynamite Duo. There we go, right here. And prior to these, they also had, such as featured in the San Diego Zoo magazine. This one features Doctor Strange. So, if you're like me, you're part of the Dynamite Generation. And these magazines came out from early 70s, I want to say to the early 90s. So they definitely covered a lot of pop culture. And I just want you guys to kick back and enjoy this podcast. And if you sit and watch, you're going to see a whole bunch of different covers. And I try to put them in chronological order. Did the best I could. And at the end, you're going to see some of the inside. So, y'all kick back. I appreciate you watching and enjoy. From sunny South Texas, signing off. We'll see you next time on the Easy Comic Reader podcast.
All right, so are you ready to unlock like a total core memory?
I am ready.
Because today, we're diving deep into Dynamite magazine.
Oh, yeah.
You know that glorious explosion of pop culture that landed in so many of our mailboxes like way back when?
Oh, I remember it well.
For this deep dive, we've got like articles, old issues, even some surprisingly pricey
Oh, wow.
collector's items, all pointing back to a time when Dynamite was basically the way kids plugged into like everything cool.
I think you're right.
So,
What's fascinating to me is how they managed to pull that off. You know?
Yeah.
It wasn't just the content. It was like the whole ecosystem that they kind of built around it.
okay, so you're telling me there's more to this story than just a really awesome magazine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To really understand Dynamite's success, we need to go back to those Scholastic book club brochures.
Oh, yeah.
You remember those?
I used to like pore over those things,
Yeah.
circling everything I wanted with like reckless abandon.
Same here. They'd show up at school like clockwork, you know? Filled with books and, of course, Dynamite magazine.
But honestly, I never really thought about the business side of it all.
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
All right.
Scholastic had this like ingenious distribution model, basically a direct line to kids
Wow.
through schools. Teachers handed out the brochures, kids placed their orders, and boom,
Yeah.
guaranteed sales for Dynamite.
So built-in audience, basically.
No newsstands, no uncertainty, just a steady stream of young readers.
That is pretty clever.
Yeah.
But I gotta imagine Dynamite itself had to be pretty captivating to keep kids coming back month after month.
For sure.
What were kids reading back then?
Oh, it was a wild mix.
Okay.
Everything from interviews with Cher and Bruce Lee
Wow.
to a comic called Bummers, where you could win $5. We're submitting a funny anecdote.
$5?
But I actually remember sending one in myself.
Did you really?
Never won, though.
$5?
Yeah.
That's serious business for a kid. I would have been sending in like bummers every single week.
I know, right?
Did you have like a favorite part of the magazine?
Besides hoping to get rich off of Bummers,
Right.
honestly, it was Count Morbido's monthly puzzle pages.
Oh, yeah.
Those things were brain-bending. And then you had Magic Wanda's tricks.
Wow.
They really crammed it all in.
It sounds like they predicted what the internet would become.
Yeah.
A place for a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, but curated, you know?
Curated by an actual human being back then.
Right. And the human behind Dynamite's curated chaos was Jeanette Kahn.
Oh, wow.
She later became the publisher of DC Comics.
Yeah. I remember that.
No less. Can you imagine starting your career with a kids magazine and ending up running like a superhero empire?
That is quite a leap. Wait, didn't I read that Scholastic initially only hired her for like a handful of issues?
Yeah, just 3 to start.
3.
Talk about underestimating someone's talent.
Pretty
But
nice.
Dynamite took off, and Kahn became like a driving force in its success.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting though, right?
Uh-huh.
Because I know this story doesn't have a completely happy ending for Khan.
You're right.
Does it?
Dynamite's massive success ended up being a bit of a double-edged sword for Kahn, Her royalty rate, even after she offered to lower it to 1%, was apparently still too much money for Scholastic. Can you believe that?
Hold on, they turned down a 1% royalty on a magazine that was basically printing money?
I know.
That seems...
It's crazy.
counterintuitive, to say the least.
You would think.
There must have been more to it than just the money.
Right. You'd think they'd jump at the chance to keep the mastermind behind their cash cow happy.
Right.
But nope. Con was out, and Jane Stein,
Wow.
wife of Goosebumps author R.L. Stein,
Oh, wow.
took over as editor.
What a wild turn of events.
Yeah.
So with a change in leadership like that, I
Yeah.
have to wonder, did the vibe of the magazine shift at all?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
To really answer that, we'd need to compare issues from both eras. But before we delve into that, let's talk about those folks who might still have these vintage gems
Oh, yeah.
tucked away in their attics.
The collectors.
Yeah.
I bet those old issues are worth a fortune now.
Well, some of them are,
Really?
depending on the condition and the issue.
Okay.
It's funny how those dog-eared magazines, the ones we probably tossed aside without a second thought,
Right.
could be worth a decent chunk of change now.
That's the thing about nostalgia, right?
Yeah.
It has a way of turning the ordinary into something valuable. But I guess that's always been the case with collectibles, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And Dynamite is no exception. Fine or better condition is rare and commands a higher price, especially for those early issues.
Right.
And then there are the covers that just scream iconic.
Yeah.
The Elvis Presley issue,
Huh.
the Farrah Fawcett one.
Right.
Those are always sought after.
Those are the ones that you see framed in, like, retro diners and vintage shops, right?
Exactly.
Instant time travel.
Instant time travel.
Just looking at them. But are there any real hidden treasures in the Dynamite world?
Oh, definitely.
Like super rare finds that only hardcore collectors know about?
There's the 3D poster book with artwork by Neil Adams,
What?
a legendary comic book artist.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the ultra-rare concentrated all-detergent promo issue.
Right.
Try finding one of those in mint condition.
A detergent promo issue. That's pretty niche.
You know, it makes sense when you think about it.
Right.
Dynamite was all about tapping into what kids were into.
Right.
And back then, even laundry detergent was part of the pop culture landscape.
You're not wrong. Okay, so you talked about the distribution model, the captivating content.
Yeah.
Now you're saying there's even more to this Dynamite success story.
There's more.
I'm all ears.
Scholastic was like a master at understanding its audience.
Okay.
They knew exactly what kids were interested in.
Yeah.
And they used that knowledge to craft a marketing machine that was practically unstoppable.
So it wasn't just about having cool stuff to sell. It was about knowing how to sell it to kids.
Exactly. Think back to those Scholastic brochures.
Oh, yeah?
They weren't just lists of titles.
Right.
They were carefully designed presentations aimed directly at young readers.
Wow.
The colorful illustrations, the catchy descriptions.
Yeah.
They knew how to make reading seem irresistible.
You know, you're right. I remember those brochures so vividly.
Maybe too.
It was like being handed a treasure map to like a world of adventure and imagination.
Right.
And Dynamite.
Yeah.
With its vibrant covers
Yeah.
and celebrity interviews.
Uh-huh.
It was like the key to unlocking that world.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
Thanks.
Scholastic understood the power of presentation
Yeah.
and used it to create a sense of excitement and
Right.
anticipation around reading.
So it sounds like Dynamite wasn't just a magazine.
Right.
It was a crucial part of Scholastic's marketing strategy.
He really was.
They basically created a pop culture empire
They did.
that revolved around their book clubs.
Exactly. And it worked brilliantly.
Yeah, it did. By understanding their audience and creating a compelling experience.
Mm-hmm.
Scholastic turned reading into something kids actually craved.
They made it cool.
They made it cool. And in a way, they were pioneers in building a sense of community
Yeah.
around pop culture.
Right.
Long before online forums and social media, Dynamite provided a shared experience
It did.
for kids across the country.
It's true. Dynamite offered a sense of belonging,
Yeah.
a connection to something bigger than themselves.
Right.
And that's such a powerful thing, especially for young minds eager to explore the world.
Okay, so we've established that Dynamite was a bona fide phenomenon,
It was.
fueled by a clever business model,
Yes.
engaging content,
Yes.
and Scholastic's deep understanding of its audience.
For sure.
But what about its legacy?
Yeah. What about it?
What impact did it have on the kids who grew up reading it?
That's the big question, isn't it? What happens when a generation's pop culture landscape is shaped by a single magazine?
It's like a cultural time capsule, giving us a glimpse into the trends and fads of like a bygone era.
I agree.
But more than that, I think it reminds us of the power of print media to connect with audiences on a personal level.
Absolutely. In today's digital world, it's easy to forget the tactile joy of flipping through a magazine.
Right.
The anticipation of a new issue arriving in the mail.
Yeah.
Dynamite embodies a certain nostalgia for a simpler time when pop culture felt more tangible, more accessible.
You know what makes you wonder if a magazine like Dynamite could even exist in today's digital landscape?
I don't know.
Would kids today, bombarded with online content, even be interested in a print publication focused on pop culture?
It's a good question. I mean, TikTok is basically the bummer's comic on steroids, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a fascinating question. And honestly, I'm not sure, but it's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Maybe the key lies in understanding the evolving needs and desires of today's young audiences. What are they craving that the digital world isn't quite providing?
Maybe Dynamite's legacy isn't about replicating its exact format, but about capturing its spirit. That sense of discovery, excitement, and community that made it so beloved.
Exactly.
Kind of like what we're doing now, right?
Yeah.
Taking a deep dive into something that sparked joy for so many people.
I completely agree. It's about finding new ways to engage young minds.
Yeah.
To spark their curiosity and to foster a sense of shared experience.
Right.
And that's a challenge worth embracing no matter the medium. So for you, our listener, what does this deep dive into Dynamite really mean?
Well, I think it reminds us that even though the way we consume pop culture has changed drastically, the core desire for connection, for that shared experience, it's still there.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what were the Dynamite equivalents for our listeners? What filled that space of pop culture connection and excitement for them?
That's a fantastic question to consider.
Yeah.
We all have those touchstones from our past, those cultural artifacts that help shape our tastes and interests. And it's fascinating to think about how those influences might be different for someone growing up today.
Right. Like, my Dynamite was probably a weird mix of Saturday morning cartoons, MTV, and whatever my older brother was listening to.
Right.
But for someone growing up now, it's probably a whole different universe of YouTube channels, TikTok trends, and video game streams.
It's a completely different landscape, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, amidst all that constant stimulation, are those moments of shared experience, those cultural touchstones that connect us, are they still as potent?
That's a good question.
It's almost like we're drowning in a sea of content these days.
Yeah.
So finding those things that resonate, that spark a real connection, it feels almost more important than ever.
I think you're right. And maybe that's the ultimate takeaway from our deep dive into Dynamite.
Okay.
It's not just about a magazine. It's about the human need for connection, for entertainment, for a shared experience that makes us feel like we're a part of something bigger.
It's about that spark of excitement, that sense of discovery,
Yeah.
that feeling of belonging that comes from connecting with something that truly resonates with you.
And in a world that's increasingly fragmented and individualized, those shared experiences, those moments of collective joy and fascination, they're more valuable than ever.
So as you go about your day, we leave you with this. What are the Dynamite equivalents in your life today?
What are those things that spark that same sense of wonder and connection?
Keep exploring. Keep those nostalgic memories close to your heart.
Yeah.
And keep seeking out those shared experiences that make life a little brighter.
I agree.
And hey, if you happen to have some old Dynamite magazines tucked away somewhere, dust them off and take a trip down memory lane, you might be surprised at how much those colorful pages still have to offer. Until next time.
Happy diving.
Happy diving.